Greetings and salutations, fellow book readers. This is Mark, and the book I will review today is The Stranger. I read an English translation of it, and also I listened to the audiobook of the original French version, read by Camus himself. My French is not very good, but the French books just sound so much better in French. Before we continue, this is personalized limited edition of The Stranger with leather cover designed and made by me. At the end of the video, I will tell you a couple of ways of how you can get one for yourself if you are interested. Now let's get back to the review. The Stranger, or L'étranger en français, is a novel written by a French writer, Albert Camus, and published in 1942. It is Camus' best-known work and one that placed him at the top of the literary world and was the major contributor to his win of the 1957 Nobel Prize. Camus was not only a writer but also a philosopher, and all his works are marked by and carry his philosophical message. He called his philosophy absurdism, and its foundation is built on the 19th century existentialism and nihilism, and basically tells us life has no meaning nor purpose. So don't expect any Hollywood happy endings in Camus' tales, which are as tragic as the fact that Camus has died so young and we missed the possibility of some great literature. What is The Stranger about? It is about emotional disconnection, indifference and social nonconformity, and the price one might pay for it. The novel describes what we could call a modern-day social inquisition and how an individual can receive extreme punishment for not playing, or more accurately, behaving by generally accepted civil rules. I explained to him, however, that my nature was such that my physical needs often got in the way of my feelings. Now, let's do a brief summary of the plot. To review The Stranger properly, it would be difficult to do it without disclosing the end. So that's what I will vaguely do, but it doesn't make the story any less interesting, and it might even help you to understand it better while you are reading it. The novel is told in the first person by a young man named Meursault, who is a pied noir or Blackfoot, who basically were Europeans born in Algeria during the French colonial rule. Part 1 starts with the phrase, "Mother died today, or yesterday maybe, I don't know," which tells us more about Meursault than his mother and basically defines him for the remainder of the novel. Meursault travels to the retirement home where his mother lived to attend the funeral. There he meets the home's director and a few people who knew her. During his stay there, he doesn't show any emotional suffering, but rather treats the funeral as a casual, maybe not casual, but as de facto event. He superficially observes the participants, and what seems to bother him the most is not the death of his mother, but the hot sun on the way to the cemetery. A few days later, back in Algiers, Meursault goes out with his girlfriend. They go swimming and see a comedy film and have sex. He mentions that his mother has died, and the girl is a bit surprised by the casual way he's dealing with the loss. After another moment's silence, she mumbled that I was peculiar, that was probably why she loved me, but that one day I might disgust her for the very same reason. Later, Meursault helps his neighbor who believes his girlfriend has been unfaithful, and he testifies in court on his behalf. His reasons for doing this favor are rather neutral and unemotional, and the whole episode with Meursault's reactions is there to further confirm his social disconnection. Another seemingly unrelated event, but somewhat important to further explore Meursault's personality, happens when he observes an old man beating and verbally abusing his dog. He says he has been watching it for 8 years, but it is made obvious he never interfered. Later he encounters the old man again, but alone. Meursault listens patiently and what might seem sympathetically to the old man, telling him that the dog has disappeared, and the old man seems to be deeply bothered and saddened by it. He tells Meursault that he has had the dog since his wife died, and he has been a good companion and substitute for his wife. So this incident seems to portray the relativity of life, which was an important, maybe the most important element in Camus' philosophy. On the weekend, the grateful neighbor invites Meursault and his girlfriend to his friend's beach house. While walking by the sea, they run into 2 Arabs, brothers of the neighbor's girlfriend, seeking revenge. The fight starts, and as a result of it, Meursault shoots and kills one of the Arabs. Part 2 takes place in prison, where Meursault is being held before the trial. Initially his girlfriend visits, but that ends quickly since officially she is not family, and Meursault doesn't try to rectify it. Maybe because he doesn't seem to be affected by her absence. Until the trial, Meursault's time is divided between mostly sleeping and thinking about his life, and occasional visits from his attorney. During the trial, the killing of the Arab is made secondary, and instead the focus is on Meursault's behavior unrelated to the crime. In the courtroom, 2 groups of witnesses testify about Meursault's general behavior. They are divided into ones that know him and like him, and the ones that don't know him and had a negative initial impression of him. The first group's testimony is mostly ignored, while the second is given unjustified preference. Based on this, the prosecutor paints Meursault as a cold, unemotional social monster and convinces the judge to apply the maximum penalty. The rest of the book is about Meursault coming to terms with what will happen to him as the result of the trial. Maman used to say that you can always find something to be happy about. In my prison, when the sky turned red and a new day slipped into my cell, I found out that she was right. And that's the basic plot. How do I feel about The Stranger? For me, the novel brings to mind and is a bit of a mix between Crime and Punishment and No Longer Human, with some obvious differences. The severity of the crime committed is much smaller, but the punishment for it is much harsher, and the social disconnection of the protagonist is out in the open and not hidden as in No Longer Human. But the final outcome is exactly the same, except that one is inflicted and the other voluntary. Meursault is an outside observer, or what we usually call a loner or introvert. He prefers to watch instead of participate, and his favorite activity is looking at people from his bedroom's balcony. But his resistance to participate seems to be more psychological than physical. Meursault's reactions to the death of his mother, and more importantly his unwillingness to conform, are the motives for his condemnation. The casual behavior and lack of visible grieving is what made Meursault a monster in society's eyes. The 2 driving forces that determine what Meursault does and what happens to him are the son and death. The son is a strong influence on Meursault's behavior during his mother's funeral and the killing of the Arab. The strong sun rays were making him miserable, and all he could think about was escaping from them. His mother's nurse said to him, "If you go slowly, you risk getting sunstroke. But if you go too fast, you work up a sweat and then catch a chill inside the church." She was right. There was no way out. And also about death. Since we are all going to die, it is obvious when and how don't matter. So Camus tells us the sun, as well as death, are 2 unavoidable and dominant forces in life, and there is no escape from them. Additionally, Camus describes to us the power of relativity in the absurd universe where there are no absolute outcomes. Death and the sun are absolute, but our reaction to them is relative. One of the examples of relativity in the book is a story Meursault remembers reading countless number of times. The story is about a man who, after a long absence, returns home, and to surprise his family, he doesn't reveal to them who he is. And at night, his mother and sister, not knowing his true identity, murder him for his money. So Meursault concludes that he died because he lied. This story seems to have had a profound impact on Meursault, and as a result, he refuses to lie, even when being pushed to conform by his lawyer, prosecutor, and the judge. And in the end, it costs him his life. So one of the morals of the stranger is that opposite actions, such as lying and telling the truth, can have the same consequences in the relative world. Everything is true and nothing is true. To stay or to go, it amounted to the same thing. Meursault, from the beginning, is being set up by the society for his final judgment. The death of his mother and scorching rays of sun were coincidental, but his reaction to them was not. And the killing of the Arab was an accident that got him into the courtroom, but once inside, the judgment was on his life and not the crime. What this implies is that society judges us all the time. So we better be on our best behavior, or at least don't be so obvious with who we are, and wear some type of social mask. Also, the society is portrayed as this mechanical and robotic machine, unemotional and unforgiving. To demonstrate this, Camus uses a figure of a woman who Meursault watches eating in the restaurant. Her actions are very robotic, and he names her Robot Woman. She represents society, and later she appears in the courtroom. So society is the spectator as well as the judge. And that's how Camus lets us know again that there is no escape from the absurd world. Further, Meursault's lack of emotions and living only in the present are very robotic as well. He says, "I opened myself up to the gentle indifference of the world, finding it so much like myself." So Meursault is a part of the very society that condemns him in a very hypocritical manner. Meursault getting himself into the courtroom seems rather incidental, but his inability to survive the process is what makes him the stranger. Nature is about survival of the fittest, and Meursault's survival instinct wasn't developed enough for him to continue. I couldn't quite understand how an ordinary man's good qualities could become crushing accusations against a guilty man. And that's the base of Camus' philosophy of absurdism. The world is a cold, indifferent place with no empathy, so it is up to you to adapt and make the best out of it. To sum it up, The Stranger is about society's power over an individual. There are social norms and traditions that need to be followed, or else you can challenge society by showing you don't need it or your indifference to it. So we have to go on pretending because everything is relative. The book reaffirms Camus' philosophical theories, which state that we live in the absurd universe and searching for some kind of absolute meaning is meaningless. And Meursault doesn't struggle or resist, but accepts life for what it is. Well, what it is according to Camus. The Stranger can be easy to read, but difficult to understand, and various readings can help since the novel is rather brief. The book is somewhat Kafkaesque, a bit resembling The Trial, which is not a surprise since Kafka was a strong influence on Camus. There is a pretty good Italian cinema adaptation of The Stranger from the 1960s with Marcello Mastroianni, who does a pretty good job as Meursault, and the film closely follows the book's plot. So this might be something to consider if you would like some visual references to go with the reading. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback which I transform into a hardcover leather-bound edition. To make the cover I use grade A naturally tan hide I buy from a tanner in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First I designed the cover, which what I did here, I found this abstract painting of this somewhat strange and partly hidden individual with this wondering and surprise, but also resigned look in his eyes, and I thought it went nicely with the book. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather-bound hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100, but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel. And for every 100 donations, I will make a lottery and draw one name. And the winner will receive the book. So, if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing, when you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually it has a very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So if you want one, don't snooze, or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here, and until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.